So my first question will be to Mike here, and we're looking to understand a bit more about the different risk factors with the research that you did, learning about the risk factors and how that may impact athletes' concussion experience or how they view concussion.
Yeah, so thanks, Ryan. So looking at concussions and just risk broadly, individuals, not just athletes, frame their understanding of risk, or their framing of risk is deeply contextualized. And we see that in sport specifically. Factors like cultural factors and the social environment and their personal experience all sort of play into how that shakes out in a concussion situation. And so, I guess starting high level with it, at cultural factors, we see things like factors with specific to different sports. If we're going to compare something like boxing to baseball, for instance, I'm thinking of the Mike Tyson quote, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. When it comes to boxing, that's very much a sign up for experience. There's an understanding intrinsic in that sport that head contact is part of it. Yet, if you were to flip that to a baseball player, I think they'd probably take exception to a right hook from an opponent. However, if you look to things like foul tip impacts and player-on-player impact sliding to base, those are understood as, that's just baseball. These things happen, these things occur. And how these events and actions are normalized can affect how athletes then subsequently behave in those instances and navigate things like recovery and prevention efforts. From a social sort of perspective, the social environment, we have athletes interact and engage with other sports stakeholders, coaches, teammates, administrators, and their understandings of risk influence their behaviors as well. An athlete has a very different framing of what risk means, what concussion means, than an administrator would, who might look at the risk to the sport, the ability to grow the game, to recruit and retain participants. Whereas the athlete is just thinking, hey, I want to go out and run around with my friends. I choose to recreate by participating in sport. And I choose this sport for, the social aspects, the camaraderie, the competition. And so as a result of that, when we look at risk and concussion, the framing of that is considerate of those social factors. Their ability to participate with friends, engage in meaningful competition with others, that's not taken in vacuum there. And then looking specific to the athlete themselves, we know previous concussion history is one of the strongest risk factors for future concussion. And when we look at some of the research that I've done, it's interesting how those experiences frame athletes' conceptualization of risk moving forward. For instance, we had a study, or I'm doing a study right now with amateur rugby athletes here in Ontario, and I asked them, what does risk mean to you? What does this look like in terms of your past concussion injuries? And those who have had concussion injuries in the past, who had very extreme, sort of on the high end in terms of symptom expression and dysfunction as a result of that, they look at future suspected concussions or incidences of head contact with a bit of a different lens. My symptoms in the past were experienced as this. They were extreme, they were intense, I was out for months. I couldn't participate, I couldn't go to school, I couldn't think, my sleeping was off, all of these things. But, I just took a baseball to the head, sliding into base, and I only have a bit of a headache, so that definitely can't be concussion. Because to me, concussion is all of these severe symptoms. And so based on that experience, we really have to be considerate of how that individual, how that group, that social group, and then how that sport perceives concussion, perceives risk, and views that relative to our own sort of understandings of it.